we're live on Facebook.
Yes, and
Yes, we are.
an exciting conversation today because we've been changed in the last couple of weeks, Kim. We've been talking about how we are looking at movements and how can movements go from minority to majority. And last week we talked about peace movement, but today we're going toward more of an activism kind of thing and going into the protest movement, which probably many people in the States haven't heard about. But you mentioned last week, Kim, that outside your house was a major protest site, and
Right.
you were telling us when we were preparing, I think, it's like, oh, you might hear people outside saying anti-Bibi stuff. Bibi meaning Benjamin Netanyahu. For those who don't know that, that's his nickname in Israel. Bibi, whether you like him or don't like him, it's not a bad or a good thing. It's just his nickname, Bibi Netanyahu. So how is there a protest outside your home today?
There is also a protest outside my house today, and I already started seeing the sirens from the police because my house is very close to one of the big centers that televisions go to protest, but those that are with families and they don't want to go all the way to there, and get in trouble with the police, they come to next to my house. This is what it looks like, actually. You can see the officer in the middle filming everyone. It was kind of an interesting view. And this is how big it gets usually. And only later in the day does it get bigger when the big protest is walking through.
Wow, that's interesting. It's interesting to live right where the protests happen, but that's partially because now by law you're supposed to only protest by your house. You can't go too far from your house for your protest. So people protesting next to your house.
Yeah, they're saying every street junction, so that everyone can go and protest. That was the deal. And I do think that it's bringing more people to the streets because it's not, you don't have to drive to Jerusalem and worry. You can just go outside. Even with, my son is 18 months old. I can take him. He sees people banging on pots and he gets excited and he starts clapping. So everyone gets excited with him. And then I go home after, 20 minutes, but I feel like at least I'm taking part of something that I couldn't have before.
So Tom is already an activist at 18 months old.
100%. I just need to get him some swag t-shirts and maybe you guys can set me up with that.
So you want to start introducing our guests?
Yes, definitely. So we have Yael Moav and Eyal Shoval, both tour guides with Majdi Tours, and both activists. We keep following you on Facebook and seeing the amazing work that you've been doing since all of this has started. And it would be interesting to hear from you. Maybe you can give us some background. Why are people even going out to protest? When did this begin? Yael?
Well, it's a long story, but things have begun like 4 years ago that people started to demonstrate against the corruption of Netanyahu, but it was really small groups, like in Jerusalem, where today the big demonstrations are happening near Balfour, near the home of Netanyahu. Every Saturday night, already 4 years, people gather together for a small demonstration talking about the corruption, saying that our prime minister is so corrupted and it's unacceptable. But it didn't, like, things didn't change. It was the same. Small group, demonstration. I think that something happened now because we had the 3 elections in a row and we thought that maybe blue and white can exchange Netanyahu. And you see that I say Netanyahu and not the Likud because it's like a one-person party. We don't even see the other person that surrounds him. And so it's not that he represents a party. He's like just one person. And So there was a disappointment that things are not changing. And I think because of the corona, people are unemployed, people have time. So suddenly the thing have just grown. I remember I was they started 4 months ago, like they call it the tent, to demonstrate 24/7 on Balfour Street as the nearest we can get to the home of Netanyahu. And there were small people, they are called the Khatyarim. Khatyar in Arabic are the old people, like people, our age. Amir Askel, that is one of the leaders of this movement, he is 67 years old. He was a high commander in the Air Force and a pilot in the Israeli Air Force. And I remember, I think it was like the 30th day, and I was there with Eyal at that evening. It was Tuesday evening, and suddenly more and more young people came. It was amazing. I mean, suddenly all the young people went out on the street demonstrating. That was the first evening that there was a lot of violence from the police. And since then, we are out on the streets. Used to be like 3-4 times a week, every Saturday. Eyal he doesn't need to, he can rent out his apartment because he moved to live on the street. Even I stayed some nights sleeping out there because we need to maintain the tent for 24/7. And it's amazing what happened. And because we can demonstrate now only 1 kilometer from our home, it has changed. I think from Tuesday night, we went back to Balfour. It's legal. We can demonstrate now even farther, but it's like almost a month that we could have demonstrated only near the homes. It made much more people went out. My mother, that is 85 years old, she's demonstrating. She wouldn't come with me to Balfour, but now when I demonstrate in the neighborhood, she would come. So it's a very interesting things that are happening.
Wow, thank you. And again, if you just joined us, we are on our live stream, Crossing Boundaries. This is Kim from Tel Aviv. I'm Aziz, joining you from the States, and we have two of our guests, Yael Moav and Eyal Shoval. And Eyal, can you tell us about this decision to just start sleeping outside and protesting? I mean, that's quite a radical decision to go. I'm not just gonna go and protest for a couple of hours. I'm gonna sleep out. What made you go all the way to that decision?
Hi everybody. Excuse me, there is quite a lot of noise from outside because I'm quite near the Balfour Street, and you can hear the police are putting the barracks back in preparation for Saturday's demonstration. So every time they do that, we understand they are preparing themselves for a big demonstration. This is what we hope going to be on Saturday. About what happened to me, I have a home, I have a family, and I have quite a cozy bed. But sometime during life, there are some moments that you understand and you see around you something happens, and there is any much moment like that in history. But once you see one, either you can sit in your sofa and look at the news and discuss it with some nice friends, and the other option is to stand up and do something. And because we understand this is a very crucial time in history now, that people are feeling that they are losing democracy now, it's time to stand up and do something. Now, I've been demonstrating for a few years already here in the center of Jerusalem, but during the demonstrations started to come, I saw one afternoon on the TV that Amir Ashkel was arrested. He was just having a speech outside on the street walk, and the policeman just came and arrested him. And pictures like that you see maybe in Iran or in Turkey. You don't see it in the democratic countries. So something changed. You see how the policemen react, how the politics reacts concerning those demonstrations, and you feel that something very, very bad is happening all around us. So I decided to come the next morning to Jerusalem and I invited Yellow as well. And we sat there and discussed the people that has been sitting there. And I said to myself, I must take action and do something. So I started to spend 2 nights sleeping on the doorstep of Bibi Netanyahu's house. It's a street. And a few other people have done it as well. But since the lockdown started and it started to ban the demonstration, and they said it is not legal to demonstrate 1,000 meters away from your home, it's another political decision in order to ban demonstration against a dictator. Because once there is a dictator, he's afraid of everybody. He's afraid of his family, he's afraid of his political party, and he's afraid about, especially about the people that are coming to demonstrate. And if he's doing that, we understood we have to do something in order to do something against it. So the only thing we could do is rent an apartment in a short distance to the place where he stays overnight in Jerusalem. And that's what we did. 4 guys, we rented an apartment in Paris Square, 200 meters from his residence. And therefore, the police can tell us that we are too far away from our home. But nevertheless, they came and they gave us some penalties. Even if we showed them the contract where we live, even though they came and gave us some penalties. So there is a lot of harassment from the police and from the municipality. But we are willing to pay the price, not only the money, but even a much higher price. Because
Thank you,
once, yes.
I want to ask you a bit about En Matzav, the group that you're wearing on you all over. But just before that, you both mentioned Amir Eskel, and I have to ask about his controversial remark to the Ethiopian officer. I mean, he told her that she can't do anything to him. He was the one who brought her to Israel as a pilot, as a former pilot. Do you feel that these demonstrations and protests are also creating division inside the Israeli community?
The protesters come from all sides of Israeli society. There isn't any left or right exactly. They're coming from everywhere because the crisis is all over Israel. And in that afternoon, what happened is the policemen just prevented us from demonstrating from all sides of the residential house of Bibi Netanyahu. There are few entrances to that building. And from each place, they pushed us away. And they pushed us quite violently. And this guy that has done amazing thing for the state of Israel all his life was pushed very violently by the policemen. And one of them was that young policeman. And maybe he said something that in other time nobody will pay attention. But everything that is said is used today against the protesters in order to say, look, there's people that are anarchists, they are aliens, they are spreading diseases and such things. But we pass it away already. And no, today, every day there is a new subject. So
yeah,
and everybody understands that this is not the issue.
I think we get so many questions today, so I'll start with one that, and I see already people sending us questions, but one thing that caught me into what you said Netanyahu is a dictator. However, anybody who following Israel's politics would say Netanyahu has won 3 elections in just 1 year. So he's not a dictator if he's winning elections, right? Why would you call him a dictator?
No, because he didn't really win an election. Every time he has to do a coalition, if you count how many candidates there are for Netanyahu and against him, the calculation is all the time against him. There are more than 60 against Netanyahu in each election. But because of the political system here, he needs to create a coalition and is using the weakness of other parties in order to become once again and again as a prime minister.
So your problem is with the system that allows, because it could be Netanyahu now, but it could be anybody else, and he's using the system of how the state is functioning to take over.
I think it's not only the system. It's
I mean, you know, I agree with you, but I'm saying, like, anybody who's listening to us today saying, you do have elections in Israel. Like in Palestine, we got none. So we stuck with our guy, whether we like it or not. But you guys had elections, and somehow he manages to play the system well and convinces even the person who ran against him to eventually side with him. And he keeps staying as prime minister, which you could say he's just a brilliant political operative guy. Would you really go as far as saying he's a dictator? I'm wondering, is that an accurate description, you think?
Yael, you want to comment, or you want me to give an answer?
I can start and you can follow if you want. Okay. You can answer because you said he's a dictator, so go on.
Now, you can use the democratic system in order to create a dictatorship. Okay, we saw it also during history. Once you are very clever and you know how to manipulate the people, and you know how to manipulate the parties in the parliament, you can maintain your power forever and ever. And he's using those parties and using his party and to destroy all the system, all the democratic system inside Israel, the court, the parliament. So all the decisions that are made today are made by one people, because all the allegations that are is facing today, he's doing anything he can in order to stay out of jail, and therefore everything is legal by his side. And we are losing democracy. You can see what's going on in the parliament. The parliament is not functioning anymore. The committees of the parliament are not functioning anymore. And there isn't any chief of police for a long time, because he has to nominate the new chief of police. And if you facing court, he wants them to be weak. He keeps them very weak all the time. They are dependent on him. So each one of them that might be a good candidate had to do whatever they can in order that he will be satisfied for the action.
I'll just clarify.
Using also the police. He's using the police also as a political weapon.
I know Kim has a question, but I want to just clarify.
I would like to add something if I can.
Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
I just was going to say, for those who don't know, Bibi Netanyahu has been indicted on multiple charges, corruption charges, and he's now has a court case against him. And what Eyal is saying is, it's weird that the prime minister will nominate the head of police who would be investigating him with multiple charges, and the attorney general and all of these. It kind of becomes a conflict of interest, and it could lead to problematic outcome. Yeah, you were saying something.
Yeah, Netanyahu, the last, his prime minister already 13 years, and he's surrounded by people that are really, people that you can't believe that are in those high positions, like Ohana or Miri Regev. Those are really people that are not, they are ministers, and they are not willing to, the only thing they'll do, they're yes men, if that's I can say that they're yes men. So those are the people that surrounded him, and they'll do everything for him, and they don't, so no one doesn't criticize him from inside, and that's another thing that we can say that he's a dictator. Another thing is that all the high positions in Israel, there is no one there. He's controlling everything. If it's in the court, in the police, and we don't have a budget yet. It's the government is not functioning. The high positions all around the public administration is not functioning. And I think there is another thing, if we're talking about the political system, is that 20% of the Israeli citizens are Arabs. And we had the last elections, 16 people that were elected from the Arab parties, and that's a lot of power. But no one is not brave enough to count them. And that's why Netanyahu, that's his strength. Because if we're talking about center and left, or what we call the just not Bibi, Rak lo Bibi, I mean, that's like we were, a lot of people were elected just because they said, not, the only thing we want is that Bibi won't be the prime minister. So in this like group, that was the biggest group, and out of 120 members of the parliament, 62 were in the group that we would call the just not Bibi, I mean, group that were elected because we don't want Bibi, but 16 were Arab, from the Arab parties. And blue and white, Benny Gantz was not brave enough to say, okay, I'm going to build a government with the Israeli-Palestinian people, Israeli-Palestinian citizens. And as long as we won't count them, we won't have power if we're talking about center and left. So Israel will stay right. And somewhat in the right, especially in the Likud, they believe that it's only Bibi. Now, if I think about my children, my son that is 20 years old, he doesn't know any other prime minister. I mean, he was from the age of 7 years, he sees only Netanyahu. So think about all the young people in the Palestinian Authority, it's the same. It's only Abu Mazen. So young people, they can't even believe that we can survive without Netanyahu. They say that he is, I mean, really, I talk with young people, even not from the right side. They say, but I mean, the only person that we have is Netanyahu. They can't imagine Israel without Netanyahu.
I think it's more that they can't imagine someone who will replace him because they don't feel that someone else is strong enough to take over. And not necessarily that they're only 100% for him. I've heard from a lot of Likud supporters that are fed up with Bibi, and I feel like the protests are also coming up because a lot of people have lost hope and security. They don't feel like the person that is leading them is actually leading them to a place that will bring us out of this crisis. I think the reason that now it's different than 5 months ago is because we were doing pretty well in the beginning. We were doing well, everyone was listening, and then we came out of the closure and Bibi said, go party, live your life. And everything was forgotten, and we got to numbers that were just shocking, not only to Israel, but to the world. And yeah.
You're talking about Corona.
Corona.
Yeah.
COVID.
Corona, the COVID-19.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm talking about the COVID-19. I think that in the beginning, it seemed like Israel was doing very well and there was a reason to trust Netanyahu. And then starting with the high holidays, people started losing their trust in the reasons that he's making decisions, if to go into closure, if not to go into closure, taking the holidays and the religious sector into consideration. I'm going to stop talking myself and go back to you guys and ask you a bit about En Matzav, if you can explain what it means, En Matzav, and how this group formed and what exactly are the goals of this group.
En Matzav is translation of En Matzav is no way that a prime minister that indicted in such a serious charges can remain a prime minister, because a leader, a public leader, should be, people are looking at him. He should be an example. And if he's indicted in such a serious allegation, he should step aside, go to court, and if he'll be free of charge, he can come back and be the prime minister. But he's not doing that because he knows he should be in jail. And therefore, this guy that is called Amir Ashkel, a major general in the Israeli Air Force, 4 years ago, he started to stand in junction all over Israel with that sign, no way, no way. And in beginning of May, this year he came to Balfour Street and was sitting there. And little by little, people joined him, started to come to Jerusalem and sit beside him. And he's a very humble person, very gentle and humble person. You don't hear him speak, ever. But he became a symbol. And he's a good symbol because he's a simple person. You know, he's doing it from his heart. He can rest in his home, using his pension and have his good life. But he's doing it for the sake of the state of Israel, and people are looking for guys like that, leaders like that. Their hands are clean. So people started to follow and join him in Jerusalem. And I think he didn't believe at the beginning that so many people will come. And today, when you come here on Saturday, you see 30 and 40,000 demonstrators coming to Jerusalem. And it's something that he just amazed to see again and again. I tell you, I've been now 3 weeks here in Jerusalem, sleeping on the sidewalk. And it's not easy, because we have a lot of harassment from the police and from the municipality and from Bibi's fans. And today in the afternoon, he called me and said, tomorrow I'm coming to be with you. Okay, in the morning, 9 o'clock, I'm coming to be with you because I know how hard it is. So this is a guy that you like to follow. And I think he'll be remembered very well in the history of the state of Israel. Once Bibi will step out of his house, he'll be remembered as one that made a change.
And I'll just mention that we're starting to see more and more groups form within this organization or movement of protest. And we planned on having additional group members join us today, but then last minute they told us that there is a big protest and they can't miss it. So we did video one of them answering the same question about their own organization. I'll just say a word about this one, or actually let's let him speak for himself, and then we'll discuss.
Hi, I'm Guy from Kum Israel, which is Get Up Israel. We are a young movement within the pink organizations operating in this revolution, which we call in the demonstrations in Israel. Kumi and the pink groups, we represent the young people of Israel. We try to bring out a voice of a generation, which is calling for something quite different from the other groups operating. We try to bring more the voice of hope and against the system in Israel, the political and economic system that has never worked for the people, and bringing it out that it's not only about Benjamin Netanyahu and his cases. He's the first one to go. And then from our point of view, it's the entire government that should stand on trial by the people and pay for the fact that we are very divided. We think in small groups instead of as people, like in kind of like in soccer with the politics in Israel. And that is a cause straight from our political system and the main conversations in it. We try to bring out the fact that it could be better and that we can be in solidarity, one for the other, and one group for the other, and bring out the fact that we should all protest, not as individual groups, as restaurants or artists or actors, musicians, but as people, and really join together in the cause that it can be better here. And that's what we hope to do. A pink future you see only through a pink flag. And that is the kind of point of view that we try to bring out in this protest. Make it fun and hopeful. Because without that, we have nothing. Thank you.
So we're seeing these young protesters come out. I didn't see pink flags from the beginning. What Yair was talking about those first protests, the smaller ones, I think they started with black flags actually, and then today we're seeing more black flags in different junctions, on bridges. People are driving to these bridges near their houses to stand with black flags, and then all of a sudden we're seeing everyone dressed in pink. And when you ask them why and what they're doing, they say they want a pink future for their children. And Yael, I think this guy that was talking on the video, he too doesn't know anything else but Bibi. But the phrase that they've come up with now is, you picked the wrong generation. So these are the people that are staying late in the protests and tackling the police. I think we have a picture even with the police. I don't know what it's called in English, the water truck that you can see all these younger people fighting that. It's definitely interesting, and we'll be taking questions now from the listeners. Aziz, do you want to get us started?
Yes, absolutely. And we already have a few. So if you want to send us more questions, please do. And we'll spend the next 15, 20 minutes at least dealing with those questions. But I also want to remind everybody we are on Crossing Boundaries live stream podcast, which is something new we started doing, is turning these episodes also into podcasts and reminding everyone that you could share those podcasts or the videos that we send to you. If you're on Facebook, feel free to share it on Facebook, send it to people, and thank you for doing that. All right, so I'll take the first question we got, which is about COVID-19 and about social distancing, and how are you able to do that? And does it actually, because the people who often more anti-Bibi might be more health, this is what Randy wrote, might be more health cautious and might be worried about COVID-19, especially that the numbers of Israel were quite bad, especially 2 weeks ago. So does that mean less people coming out? Are you able to stay safe in those protests? What do you do to make sure you are getting the maximum people, but also applying safety precautions?
Oh, Eyal, you're muted. Both of you are muted. But I saw you put up a mask.
Yeah. Each one of us goes all day long with a mask on. Okay, nobody's taking it out, especially in our groups, because we understand this is a serious business. We are not. You not say that there isn't any corona. There are people that say there isn't any corona. This is all rubbish. But no, we are using it. If you look at the demonstrations, you see that most of the people are having the face mask. But what happens in demonstrations, people are getting crowded. This is the typical way of demonstration. Now, when the policemen are putting the barracks, they put the barracks in order to control the people. So they just put the barrack in a short distance, so the people are getting more and more crowded all the time. And then, the politician says, look how crowded they are, they're spreading diseases. But if you're looking about researchers in, at least at the state, you see there isn't any evidence that people are infected in demonstrations. But every place that we sit, especially here in Balfour Street, the policemen are coming all the time to check that we are having our mask on. If somebody takes off his mask under his nose, already gets a report. And they know the problem is not with us. There are concentration of religious Orthodox people that they have big families and their houses are tiny and they study together. And the most of the people that are infected in those small communities, not here. But nevertheless, all the time, like there is an eye on the sky looking at us, that we have to be better than all of the other people. And we try to.
Kim, do you want to pick the next question?
Sure, all these questions are amazing. Keep them coming. We do have a question here about if the policies that of mismanagement are only towards COVID, or are Israelis fed up with Bibi in general? Karen is asking if the left is beginning to gain courage in the resistance against the settlement growth and the confiscation of land in the Jordan Valley. I personally think that those are different things as Israelis are struggling at the moment to get to ends meet. But Eyal, Yael, if you have an answer as well, please feel free.
The COVID, I mean, we started to demonstrate, to go out on protests against Netanyahu 4 years ago. But because of the COVID, much more people joined us. And now because the economical situation and so many people are unemployed and people can see that, I mean, the COVID is not managing it right, so more and more people are coming. I used to go out on a protest and always like being really frustrated. We even went together, Eyal and me, a few times on Saturday night, and like they say, where are the young people? Where are the young people? I mean, they're this generation that they say that they picked the wrong generation. And I think because of the COVID, they are out in the streets because they say we don't have any future. We are unemployed. We'll never have money to buy an apartment. And yes, they're out on the street, and that made the big difference. And talking about the political issues, about the settlements, or about the occupation, it's something that maybe at this part, I mean, that's not the heart of the protest. The protest is against the corruption. It's against Bibi. It's saying that there is no way that he'll be the prime minister. And after that, hopefully, when he will leave us alone, we can go on and fight for justice and against the occupation, because we need to have as much people that we can. And not all the people that are demonstrating with us, that are going out on the street against Netanyahu and against the corruption, will join us if we'll talk about the occupied territories or about the settlement. Personally, I think there is a straight line between the settlement, between the occupation, and between the corruption. I think you can separate it.
Go on.
Can I add in something?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Twice the municipality had evacuated us from our place very, very violently. And as if we were criminals or drug dealers or something like that. Later on, when the policeman came to during the demonstration, Yael told me something. Look how they behave. And I understood it already before that, but it was very, very obvious. The methods that they used to deal with the demonstration were used before that by them and by other people. And for me, it was very hard to admit it, because I was a soldier in the Israeli army for many, many years. The same behavior of the policemen of Jerusalem, exactly like the soldier behaved in the West Bank. And this is something that is ruining our democracy as well. So I think when people understand that, and more people understand it as time passes, we know there is a connection between what's happening today inside Israel and what is happening outside the green line.
I remember in 2011 going out to protest in Israel, Palestine, but it was mainly Israeli protest against Bibi as well, because he's been the prime minister for so long. And I've been in these huge protests of tens of thousands of people, and we were sure Bibi is lost. That's it. I mean, it was such a good feeling. And yet somehow he managed to turn it around and win that battle. And I hope this time it would turn different. But I remember back then, it wasn't just the US, it wasn't just Israel going through these protests. There were similar protests in the US, or protests mainly in the Arab world. And it kind of was all inspiring each other. The Arab Spring inspired the 10th protest in July 2011. And so one of our questions here is saying, do you think there's any influence of US demonstrations in Israel or vice versa? Is there any connection or inspiration that Israelis are drawing from the United States or Americans are taking from Israeli protests against the government there?
I think there is a slight connection because Bibi is connected very well to Trump. Okay, I think they admire each other. And once Bibi is not malfunctioning with the corona crisis and the economic crisis, it's happening almost the same in the States. So what we hope that if Trump will fall during the election, it will inflect also what's happening here, because it will weaken very, very much Bibi's, and then it will be much easier for us to keep on going.
Although I have to say, and then Kim, you can pick the next question. Economically speaking, owning a small business in Jerusalem, in Israel, registered in Israel, and owning a small business in the States, I'm shocked to say, even though Israel often claimed to be a welfare state, more of a welfare state than the United States, the abilities to get help in the US for a small business is tremendously more than it was in Israel. And I was completely shocked about that there was more support for companies, small businesses here than there was in Israel, which often claimed to have a much stronger roots of social welfare and taking care of people, and even unemployment benefits. There was way more help for people here. And I know it wasn't enough. And I know a lot of us in the States are saying, we, especially now as many of these benefits have faded out, are struggling. But friends, you know, Yael, you've written stuff about this. I remember reading on the internet. Friends I have in Israel and are not getting pretty much anything. And if they're getting, it's very little. And friends I have in Palestine are getting completely nothing. And it was such a surprise for me. Sorry, Kim, you're...
No, I agree, and I wanted to add that individuals too. I mean, I told you that I received the check from the U.S. because we did our taxes before we came back, and from Israel I still haven't received anything. So, unfortunate situation. Well, there's one question that I think can be easily answered, but I would like to hear from you that you're in the protests themselves, if you're seeing this, if there are any demonstrators that are generally supporting the Likud, but feel that Bibi needs to go. Now, from what I said before, I think that there are, and I think that anyone that is feeling the financial pain and understanding that nothing is going to change, they feel like they need a change no matter if they support the Likud or not. But I wonder if that's something that you're feeling throughout the protest itself. Are you talking about politics at all?
It depends what do you call politics. First of all, yeah, we see more and more people that were Netanyahu supporters that voted to the Likud years after years and were active in the Likud that are now demonstrating with us. More and more that will join us. I can hear a lot of people that say Bibi should go, but they don't feel comfortable to join the demonstration. They don't feel comfortable to protest with us because the political issues. There are some groups that, something that is really nice about this, or amazing about this demonstration, is that we are a lot of groups, small groups and some groups, even in Matzav, where we are. There is no leaders. There are no leaders. It's like things that are just happening by themselves. So there is a group that does mention much more the political situation, you know, talking about the occupied territories and people. Some people tell me I would have joined this demonstration, but because I'm rightist, I'm not leftist, I don't feel comfortable to come. So it's like very difficult, or like we need to be very careful so more and more people can join us. So we don't talk a lot about, like, we won't talk about the occupied territories or about the settlements. that's not the heart of this demonstration. Though, again, me personally, I think it's completely involved.
Well, what we can see is that he doesn't have a lot of supporters on the streets. Next to us, there is a small tent of Bibi's supporters. There are maybe 3 or 4, sometimes 2 people there. And when we have demonstration, big demonstration, maybe 15 or 20 people are facing us. That's all. They're not going out to the streets anymore.
But it turns violent when you face each other sometimes. I mean, I've seen some videos. A friend of mine a week ago was punched out in one of those small protests outside his home. Somebody just walked to him and punched him, right? Actually, one of the guests we've had on our show, Gershon Baskin. So sometimes that turns into a violent reaction because I assume they don't want these protests to happen.
I think
Yes, please.
Okay. One thing that Bibi really did good is like to break us into group, and his supporters, they really believe that we are traitors. They are standing in front of us with a big sign saying the leftists are traitors, and they really believe that we are traitors. They really believe that we don't care about Israel. That is ridiculous. And then they can be really violent against us. Sometimes it will be just, calling us in names, but saying terrible things like, go back to Auschwitz and things that you can't believe that they say or spit on us, but sometimes they can really get violence. But they deeply believe that we are the traitors. And the big difference is like we have shares that we say, Lech, go away, go away. We're talking about Netanyahu. Netanyahu, please go away, leave us alone. And then they go and they say, you go away. I mean, all of you. We are talking about the political issue. We're talking about the corruption. They are talking about all of us. They say, if we say Netanyahu go away, they say you go away. If we say Netanyahu is a traitor, they say all of you are traitors. And they deeply believe that we are dangerous to Israel. And they can be very violent. I mean, I am worried about the people like Eyal, sometimes that I join them, that we sleep outside there. It can be not only unpleasant, it can be dangerous.
Well, it didn't start during Netanyahu's time. It happened many, many years ago, this kind of violence. In 1984, there was a hand grenade that was thrown to a Peace Now movement in Jerusalem, and one person was killed there. So the name of the guy that threw that hand grenade was Yona Avushmi. So when we sit down together in Balfour Street, we say the new Yona Avushmi now is petting his hand grenade, is stretching his hand to the pocket to take it out. So we expect something like that to happen. We take it in account. We can't do a lot, it's a police job, but we take it in account that it might happen.
I definitely think that the protests and these kind of acts of violence, physical or not, are bringing up a lot of the problems within the Israeli society. And Karen was asking here if you think that the police actions against the young protesters will bring to some sort of awakening about the abuse against Mizrahis or Palestinians. And just a few weeks ago, we were talking about the Mizrahi community and the struggles that they've been going through since coming to Israel. And I know that a lot of people that are not going to protest, even young ones that are from Mizrahi descent, they're saying that these protesters are the white supremacists that not supremacists, but the white elite Ashkenazi that do not see us. They are fighting for a cause, but it's not our cause. Do you feel that at all?
First of all, yes and no. I mean, first of all, in like not our generation and our kid generation, there are so many mixed couples. Like my niece and nephew, they're half Ashkenazi, half Yemeni. And from the others, brother, half Turkish, half, I mean, we're so who, I mean, if you're half and half, will you demonstrate or not? So I think Israel has changed. And I really believe that for political issues, and Netanyahu, I mean, Menachem Begin was the best, he was the first one, but Netanyahu, he manipulates the people and he convinced them that it's because they are Mizrahi. But yes, you can see that most of the people that go out will be leftist, Ashkenazi, maybe more high society, high socioeconomical class. I have a friend that he is a Persian originally. He came as a young person from Iran, from Persia, and he's married to Ashkenazia, so his kids, they demonstrate. But when he walks, people look at him, you know, and feel kind of uncomfortable, and they think maybe he supports Bibi and he's just here to provocate because he doesn't look like us. So this issue does exist, but we do see. I mean, it's mixed, and I hope more and more people will join us. Like today, the people in Yafo, they did a big demonstration. People that have small business shops, they took out all the shoes and the clothes and they burned it. They'll join us, I hope.
Well, we'll have to go quicker through the questions because we got only 5 minutes left and we got a few more questions. I assume Lorraine meant Attorney General in her question and asking, is he just acting as a figurehead, or is he really representing the people against Bibi's, or is he afraid of him?
I think maybe she was referencing Amir Eskel that they were mentioning before.
Yeah, that's either I couldn't tell which, either the Attorney General or Amir Eskel. Yeah.
Is Bibi afraid of Amir Eskel?
The other way around.
No, he's not. He's not. Not at all. He's not afraid of anyone. He's really going all the way out. He told me I might stay here by myself. If everybody will go, I'll still be sitting here on the sidewalk and raise that flag. He's going until Bibi will go. He's not going to give him up.
We got 2 more questions. Kim, you want to take one and I'll take the other?
Sure. We have one from Bill. Why aren't protesters also protesting the supporters in the Knesset so that a vote of confidence can happen? You were talking about no one having this courage to stand up against. So do you feel like the protesters are actually giving that push of confidence?
Why are they not pressuring people who are in the Knesset, basically,
right,
against Bibi?
Well, there are people from the Knesset that we see them a lot in the protest, like Yair Golan, that he's like Meretz left, and there is Eli Avidar that is from Avigdor Lieberman's party, that is very right. We see them in Bugi Alon. We see them every demonstration. They are joining us, they are walking with us, they are talking with us, they demonstrate with us. But yes, most people are afraid. I think it's like people, especially around Netanyahu, it's like, I'm missing the word, כאילו מחושפים. You know, like it did
You chose a hard word. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hypnotized, okay. Like they're hypnotized.
Yeah, like they're hypnotized by him. They're so afraid that if he will, it's hard to understand it. But yes, I thought we will see much more like Yair Lapid, that he's trying to he's the head of the opposition and he thinks that he can replace Netanyahu. We don't see him at all. I don't know why. I mean, he could have supported us and we would have supported him if he would join us.
I can tell you why, actually, because he doesn't want to be looked at as leftist, because that would make him lose certain votes. Just like, this is how...
But here, Eli Avidar, that is from the party Israel Beitenu, Israel Our Home, that are really, really, we see him every evening with us. He's not afraid.
Apparently, Lieberman got more guts than Yair Lapid. So
yeah, that's the thing.
I got
that's the thing.
One last question, and it's from Robert Kramer. He's saying, I wonder how Israel can survive as a democracy and a Jewish state as long as the ultra-Orthodox and West Bank settlers continue to grow in numbers, encouraged by finance and financed by American evangelical groups in the state.
I wonder as well.
I read this question and I a little bit worry about it, because I don't think necessarily the problem is that the ultra-Orthodox is I don't know, pro-Netanyahu or anti-Netanyahu. I think you can't, just like I hate it when Israelis talk about us as a demographic threat, I worry when we talk about other people as kind of they're growing in numbers, it's a problem. On the other hand, I do understand what Robert is saying. Politically speaking, really the reason Netanyahu in power, we were talking about coalitions, but the reason he's in power is he's have the coalition from the settlements, which continue to grow. We just read today, settlements are gonna grow the fastest maybe ever with the new authorization of buildings in the West Bank. The ultra-Orthodox community just naturally grows faster than any other community in the country. And those two are major powers in the Knesset, and it's hard to build a coalition without them. And so as long as they support Bibi, is there really hope? I'm guessing that's really the question. Is there really hope to, because it's also going to go toward more, Kim, you and I had this conversation the other day. It's slowly going to become also a religious state. You already have people in the Knesset talking about a country run by the halakha, by the Jewish law, and not by any democratic aspects. And now maybe it's not acceptable to really say it, but in 20 years, in 15 years, the numbers will be there to make that actual law.
Yep.
Well, we don't know exactly what the future will be, but in the history of the Jewish people, there were a few disasters already. All of them happened because of extremists. So right now we're exactly on the point, 70 years, after 70 years, usually there is a point that you must decide about something. But when we sit inside that compound, from time to time, there are Orthodox people that are coming to talk. And when we speak, suddenly you're facing another human being, and you started to talk, and you see you can have a conversation. And sometimes they accept what we say, sometimes we understand what they're saying. So the only solution is to reach a point that everybody is accepting the other one way of life. Otherwise, they understand and we understand that there will be no future. But I think they are rational people after all, and they understand that the only way for them to maintain their way of life is also to accept the non-religious people here in Israel, because after all, they are the ones that supporting them mostly. So they have to adjust to the modern way of life, exactly like they do in the state or other places as well.
Which we saw that they don't always do in the States, but I agree with you completely. I think that the problem is when the government or the news are using it against everyone, basically saying that it's the ultra-Orthodox that are bringing the numbers up. No, it's the protesters, and always continuing to create this division within the community. Okay, Aziz, should we say thank you?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Ayal. Always good to see you. And all the power, all the strength in your activism and what you do. We totally understand how hard it is. And no protest movement ever achieves what it wants easily. That's the thing. So we understand how hard it is.
Say that we won't give up till Bibi will leave us alone. So we won't give up. We'll just go on, and we'll win. We will win.
Stay strong.
Inshallah.
Yes, next week we're continuing with current events. We're talking about the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict. It will be super interesting. I mean, my first question was, what? There is a conflict outside of Israel, Palestine? I'm kidding, of course, but we're going to continue this series of current events through the next few weeks.
And just
we hope that
this conflict is really interesting in the sense of traditionally. In the 90s, Azerbaijan and Armenia had another big flare, big fight. And who supports each of these countries was really fascinating, because you would assume Azerbaijan is a Muslim country, Shia mostly. Armenia is a Christian country, and yet, Iran was supporting Armenia, which is Iran is a Muslim Shia country, and so the alliances would surprise you quite a bit in this conflict. And so we will go into the geopolitics of it, understand what's happening there. Obviously, it's a territorial conflict as well, and we'll try to how do we move forward from this conflict.
Right. Join us. And again, like Aziz mentioned before, everything will soon be available on podcast format on different platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google, and more. We'll share with you once ready. Thank you again. And it's not how we say always, it's not where you travel.
Shabbat shalom. We say Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.